quick take. I'm your host, Susie Tomanchuk, along with James Capps. How are you, James?
I'm proud to be here.
Woo!
Super excited. Yep.
I am super excited too because you brought a friend along. You brought a friend.
I
Buy
did.
one, get one.
I brought a friend along. So it's like he's my chaperone. But yeah, very excited. We've got a good friend of mine, Dr. Hisham Talukder, here today, who has got a great background in data science. Super sharp individual. I've learned a lot from in this space, and we thought today would be a great opportunity for us to talk a little bit about data science, talk about the history and the evolution of that space. And gosh, so much is going on there. So many of our guests and our listeners are asking questions about that, and so we thought we'd bring Hisham in to talk a little bit about that.
And doctor, like this is a person that knows what he's talking about. So like I'm in awe. So thank you for bringing him.
Yes.
I have a new friend too.
There you go. So Hisham, why don't you just kind of set the stage for us on this ecosystem?
Yeah, sure. James, Susie, great to be here. And James, we're officially friends. I have it on video now, so you can't deny it from going forward. I think my experience in data science is like very unique because I've seen sort of the evolution of data science. So I've been in this data science field for about 10 years now. I come from a PhD in applied statistics. And I remember my first job out of grad school, it was like I was only working with PhDs. So it was a team of 4 to 5 data scientists, all PhDs. If you look at the data science field now, hey, if you know how to code, if you know statistics, if you know math, and you know how to code really, really well, you can be a data scientist, right? And that's not to say that the skill set has gotten down. It's really around the evolution of technology, the evolution of computers that have seen that change. And I've worked on data science teams where you're in the back room, all you're doing is coding. And I've worked with data science teams where you're working with the most senior leader in an org or a company to try to understand problems that you could potentially solve with data science, and any spectrum in between. And obviously, you need different skill sets to tackle all of these different problems.
Yeah. And I was thinking when you were talking about like, that is such a different place than I am. I am not a technologist. And so I would never be in those rooms. And I actually was just meeting with a friend of mine who's a C-level person. And she said, I feel a lot of pressure to know more than I do. And it makes me really nervous. And so I really would like us to really unpack that. What do you see at those high levels about what their assumptions are?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that I've seen consistently is this like data science being treated as like a silver bullet, a black box, right? Like you give me a problem, data science will solve it. And there's always this discussion whenever I join a company, whenever I join a new team, or even an existing team that's been there for a couple of years of talking to leadership and trying to explain to them what data science is. Data science, like any other role, like any other field, it's sort of building a house, right? Like you need to first build a foundation. You need to build on top of it. You need to start with the easy problems. And then one other thing is data science always needs to match the business that it's trying to help. Not all businesses need Gen AI. Not all businesses need this like complicated solution, right? So it's like really working with leaders, not as a way of educating them, but almost partnering with them to say like, here's what data science is, here's what data science is not. Now, how can I help your business in the most effective way?
Yeah, I thought James was going to jump in there, but I think also what you're saying is don't be afraid to ask the questions like, how does this fit together? Because to me, from a person I was in the business piece of it, when I'm working with somebody that really has an expertise around data and technology, to really just be like, how do we make this work? Like to your point about the baseline, how do we work best together?
I think that's a really good point. And it's not just like at a human level, how to work with partners, but also at like a technology level. So like where I have seen in my experience, data science be the most successful is when it becomes a part of the overall system, right? So for example, I worked in a ad tech company where we wanted to make sure we're showing the ads that is most relevant to our end user, right? So if you think about that system of showing that ad, people come into a website, it fires off a request, ads get sent, people click it, then they go and may or may not purchase it. That's the system. What you don't want to do is come in and say, hey, let me do an analysis and let me tell you, build a PowerPoint slide of what's going on. You want to make sure you build a solution that you could almost insert into a system. So now the system becomes people come into a website, they request an ad, the ad goes to my data science system, gets the scores out, it tells it what ad to show, then it goes back and sort of continues it, right? So it's not only just like building a partnership of like togetherness at a human level of making sure you have the right partners and you're working together, but also at a technology level of making sure everything is working together and kind of talking to each other.
Wow, yeah, that's I really see the need to decompose that mystery, right? Really take it from, hey, we've got this new thing I saw on the in-flight magazine and I want my company to implement it, to, hey, let's take a look at what we're trying to solve for, what are the problems we have, and how do we articulate them. So I love that jump from magic bullet to, individual problem solving. I think that's something that so many leaders lose track of and expect maybe, my data sciences will just solve my problems.
And I think like where that is the most successful is once again when it's a partnership and you're working together, right?
Yep.
Like I always tell my business partners, you know the business a lot better than I do, right?
Sure.
So what you don't want to do is come to me, take lessons from me of like, here's a business problem you should be solving, right?
Yeah.
You should be bringing up a business problem. We should have a discussion. And I know the technology, you know the business. That's where we make the best partnership, right? So it's not a one-way street. It's not them telling us or us telling them. It's really working together. And I do think that evolves as you gain more and more trust with your partners. As you gain more and more trust, sort of the opportunities start to open up, right? Now we can take some big bets that they might not be thinking about because they have that trust that, hey, we've been able to build certain things that's become ROI positive.
So what I'm hearing you say, if the first real, the nugget we want to talk about is really realize that it's not a silver bullet. The second thing I'm hearing you say though is you've got to create that trust and you've got to create that dialogue. And to do that, you really need to start small. And is that really the best way you've seen people work together?
That's right. I think you need to start small, and you also need to, going back to that house analogy, build a foundation and sort of a vision of how that will evolve, right? So It's like, hey, for example, not surprising to anyone, data science needs data. Data needs to be part of that foundation, right? Many times I've been in sort of the final presentation of a data science model where they will bring up issues, but it's not really issues around the model, it's issues on the data, right? And it's like, hey, like, yes, but we've assumed that we have issues with the data, right? Like you need to assume certain things about the data to move further, because what you can do also on the other side is wait for perfect data, right? So like you need a foundation of data, you need a culture of data. The culture of data means, hey, data science not all the time will work. You need that ability to fail. You need that ability to learn from your failures. You need the ability to experiment. So I think like if you pair up data, if you pair up the right culture and the right buy-in from the senior leadership, that's where you start to sort of evolve this culture of data science. And you can put a vision forward that is not just project to project, but more around sort of business challenges to business challenges.
Yeah, I think that's, it's so fascinating how, so many of our implementations, our journeys, our changes are really foundational on culture, right? You can do a lot of things. You can bring in consultants, you can bring in new tools, technology. Look, at the end of the day, you've got to have a conversation around culture because, as I always say, the technology is the easy part, the people is the hard part, and that culture has got to be part of the conversation.
And one thing around that is that culture doesn't just stop, or like you don't need, investing in that culture doesn't just stop, right? Like I've worked with the most sort of technology savvy company to like startups that are just getting into technology. And both of those sides, you need to continuously invest in the culture, right? You need to make sure the culture is there, but also you need to make sure culture is evolving, right? The culture that might have worked when your company was 10 people with one data scientist is
Totally.
probably not going to work when it's 100,000 people with 2,000 data scientists.
Yeah. Yeah, especially at the top, in
Mm.
leadership, because you can assume that everybody has the same mindset as you. And as things are growing, that everybody is kind of on board and energetic. But it is really important. I love what you said about the relationship piece and that trust. And it's reevaluating that and resyncing around making sure everybody understands the parameters, if you will, around each of the business challenges.
Absolutely. I always tell the story to friends. Like, I always realized I made it in a job is when I have a senior person that's not from the technology side, either the business or product side, just calling me out of the blue and saying,
Yeah.
"Hey, I just want to brainstorm something with you."
Yep.
Right? That's
Mm-hmm.
when you know as a technologist, you've made it in that room,
Yeah.
right? And it's not just a technology thing. It's like, hey, like I just want to brainstorm something with you that might start at the high level. There's definitely a data science element to it, and we're going to get to that. And that happens to me at every job. And that's when I'm in my head, I'm like, all right, I've made it. I've arrived, right? I think I've
Mm-hmm.
made it in this
Yeah.
job. And it's a great feeling because it
Mm-hmm.
goes both ways, right? So, like,
Yep.
you've shown the product and business leader that there's value you can bring. And also, they see the value in a technologist leader, right? They see the value in a data
Mm-hmm.
science leader.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It makes me think, as a salesperson, I kind of was resentful of the engineers, the technology people, even the finance people. Like,
Wait a
why are you
minute,
asking me all
really?
these questions?
Wait, you were
Yeah.
not resentful of me. You loved
Yeah.
me.
I know.
God,
I
oh,
was
that
like, just get
hurts.
out. Get out of here. Like, I'm going to tell you when I need you. And you're right. That influence is so important. And one characteristic of influence is when you get that call and
Yeah,
people depend on you and
yeah.
I didn't expect this conversation to go to relationships and culture. But it really is great to know that both are so important to the success of this
And
kind of project.
And I think you learn it with experience, right? Because, like,
Mm-hmm.
I am sure there are people that I've worked with in the sales department early in my career that would agree with you, Susie, right? It's like, hey,
Yeah. Yeah.
I hated working with that guy, Hisham. He thought he knew
Yeah.
everything. But
Yeah.
then you kind of evolve. And that's where I meant of
Mm-hmm.
like just building that partnership, I think is honestly one of the key factors of data science success. You need to make sure you have partners that you could rely on, that
Yeah.
you could work with to ultimately solve the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's it's always about the people. We say that so often on the show, but and I do think this is a unique space. There's so many technologies that are people adjacent or people use,
Mm-hmm.
but this is looking at problems and addressing issues that are very complex and are not simply just an implementation of a piece of hardware or a new plant or some code that's, doing additional information security. This has the opportunity to really bridge a lot of areas, and I think you're highlighting a really unique part of this emerging space that I think we need to take into
Mm-hmm.
consideration.
And the space continues to evolve, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if you think about, once again, going back to sort of my journey when I came in, like statistical models, like that was data
Mm-hmm.
science, right? And then it went machine learning. That became sort of a big, big, sexy word in data science. Then it went artificial intelligence, AI. That now you're seeing a lot of buzz around Gen AI. And a lot of times what happens is something gets introduced, huge buzz, and then people start to go, okay,
Yeah.
how can I really use this, right? What can I leverage this for? Like in this Gen AI space, I think a lot of companies now are starting to think about, okay, what do I use this for, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's not something you use for every solution, but there's clear use cases of it. I was just looking at a demo the other day of like basically talking to a computer where it makes videos for you or it makes images for you, right? That's fantastic. If you're in the ad tech space, you can create ads without any resources. that's huge, right?
Yeah.
So if you're an ad tech company, you should be investing in Gen AI. You should be doing that research, right? But not, not if you're any company. So I think like no matter what that technology is within data science, what I've seen is it applies to different companies in different sectors in
Hmm.
very different ways.
Wow. All right. Well, that's just great insights, Hisham. Let me kind of wrap up here and see if I can take some three takeaways for our listeners. I think the first one that I heard, which was so great, is remember this isn't a magic bullet. It doesn't solve all problems, and have a realistic perspective on what this is. Second, start with small. Start with those little initiatives so you can start to grow and understand where it works for you. Should we be doing this for our company? Are we aligned with this? That is the technology. Really, where do we want to see it applied? And then third, it's really about the culture, and you've got to have a
Hmm.
data focused culture, and your firm has got to understand and embrace that there is a culture shift. If you're really going to take advantage of technology in this space, you equally have to shift the way that you think about data. How'd I do
Yeah.
there? Is that a good summary?
No, I thought that was good. I think that I learned a lot that there is the collaboration is really important to your last point of
Yep.
being there. Wow, I think we've brought it up a level having a doctor here. So I'm super excited. Thank you so much, Hisham, for being here today and enlightening all of the quick stirs out there. So we appreciate you. Thanks.
Absolutely. This was really fun.
All right. Thanks. Thanks so much, Hisham. Take care.